Hello everyone, and welcome to another week in my backyard. I have some new subscribers, so I just thought that I would take a few minutes and introduce myself. My name is Jessica. I live in the suburbs outside of Columbus, Ohio with my husband Ryan and our 3 cats. I didn't grow up in the country. I didn't grow up on a farm. I grew up kind of in the country in Northwest Ohio. But I didn't grow up really with a lot of gardening and canning and food preservation, those sorts of things. My dad did have a large garden for a couple of years, and as well as some of my grandparents, but for the most part I grew up with convenience foods. I lived with my mom, and she was a single parent and worked full-time, and so she was busy. And I have always been really interested in health. It may have been for the wrong reasons when I was younger, but the past couple of years I've gotten really passionate about wanting to know where my food comes from, wanting to know what's in my food, really feeling that disconnection that I think we have in our society now, when you're really just going to the grocery store and pulling stuff off the shelves and not always looking at that ingredient list or knowing what's in the food that we're using to nourish our bodies. And I don't have the money to, just buy a homestead out in the middle of the country. It's a dream that we're working towards, but I didn't want to wait to realize that dream. So I have a nice big backyard. It's one of the reasons why we bought this house. This is the first year that I've done a large garden. I started canning last year. I got my entry with jam and I was hooked. It felt great to open those jars of jam that I made myself. And so this year I have expanded that. I've done a lot more and using stuff from my garden, and I just would like to continue to expand that skill set. This year I think my garden did fairly well. I didn't do great with greens. A lot of my seeds just didn't grow. I finally had some dinosaur kale that was coming up and it got eaten by something, so that was really disappointing. Also, my tomatoes didn't really do anything this year, also disappointing. But a lot of stuff did really well. My zucchinis did well, and I learned some new recipes and preservation techniques for the zucchinis. I got a lot of cucumbers. I was able to make a lot of pickles. Fruit we really sourced through the farmers markets, sales at the grocery store, and making jams and freezing frozen fruits. That way I'm not eating fruit out of the season throughout all of the winter time. And this has been the most active we've been with food preservation yet. My pantry is getting full. I have a full freezer full of meat and vegetables that have been sourced as locally as I can afford to do so. So that's who I am. I'm so glad to have you on this journey with me as I'm learning and growing and making mistakes and trying things out. And I hope that if I could just inspire you to grow something and preserve it, freeze it, dry it. I believe all of this knowledge is really important to pass on and share with others. So here we are. Thank you so much for joining me. This week I'm doing some garden work. It is late August. Labor Day weekend is this weekend, and so I'm starting to clean some things out. I'm starting to think about how to preserve the plants that I have growing, and I'm transplanting some specifically brassicas that I started a few months ago that I'm hoping I have a better autumn harvest than I did a spring harvest for those plants. We just keep taking it day by day.
guys, so you're probably asking yourselves, what am I doing making a mess in the shed that I just cleaned? I asked myself the same question, except for 2 nights ago, I looked out my back door to check on Thumper, the stray cat that we feed, and there was a tiny little baby kitten eating crumbs out of her bowl, and it was by itself. I rescued my 3 cats that I have in the house now from the colony that lives in my neighborhood, and I can't just leave that little cat, the little tiny kitten, I mean it's probably only 6 to 8 weeks old, fend for itself. Hence this little pen. It's probably not structurally sound and the kitten can probably get out of it, I mean, but our house is small. We don't have an extra room that we can put it in. I don't know that I want to put it in the basement by itself yet. I don't know. We're playing it day by day here. So stay tuned.
are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? You can't have none of this. No, honey. This is not for you. It's for Mom. Tater tot.
Isn't that beautiful? Those tomatoes, the jars, are gorgeous.